there, Stampers. This is Lisa with Queen Bee Creations. Today we're going to be playing around with the Mountain Air bundle. I have it down here on my desk. This consists of this stamp set that actually can be used two ways. You can stamp both sides of the stamp, which you won't quite understand until I can show you. But it also does have these coordinating dies that go with it to make some great masculine cards. And we're even going to pair it in one of my examples with another masculine stamp set that's in the new January to June mini catalog. So let's go ahead and get started. I will move you down to my workspace. And like I said, this is the bundle we're using. And then I brought in some supplies, and I've already got them pre-cut for you. My card base is 8.5 by 5.5, scored at 4 1/4, and this is basic gray. I then have a layer of Night of Navy. This is 3 7/8 by 5 1/8. And then I've got a piece of Designer Series paper. This is in Seaside Spray, and I cut it to 3 1/4 by 5. And then I used our stitched nested labels to cut out just some general shapes. So this was the large one on that side, and then I cut the next size down out of white. Here we go. On that side. So I have two of our nested labels. And then I've just got some scraps of Whisper White and Night of Navy. And then because I wanted to put a sentiment on the front that was little, we're going to be using the Itty Bitty Birthdays, It's Your Day. And we're going to mount that on some circles that I'm cutting out with a 1 1/2 and 1 3/8 circle punches. This one's straight, this one's scalloped. And then I grabbed my colors. So these are the colors I'm using: Basic Gray, Seaside Spray, Night of Navy, Smoky Slate, and Mossy Meadow. So what I'm going to do is get started by putting some of our card together. And I'm just going to start layering this up. And because it's such a small border between the Designer Series paper and the Night of Navy, I'm going to use liquid glue. I do that every time I need to have a little extra time to be able to wiggle it around and make sure my sides are even. I've been doing this a long time, and you know, most times if I've got that 1/4 inch to play with, I'm pretty good. When you get down to these 1/8 inch differences, so it's a 1/16 on all sides, it gets kind of tricky. But the liquid glue is my secret to being able to wiggle it around and get it mounted centered just like I want it. And then after I have that, then I can move to my snail adhesive to adhere it to the card. And then I'm just going to create a little scene in the middle of this one using our stamps. And I'm going to keep this scene very simple. I'm going to come in first with our mountains. And I'm going to do them in Seaside Spray. And then I wanted to have a couple trees pop up from the background. And in order to do that, I need to mask off my mountains. And so I'm going to just set this piece on top of them, which I've cut out with the coordinating dies. So I use this die right here just on some scrap white paper. And the trees were a little longer than that, so I used some Post-it note paper, which also helps keep it kind of stuck in the place where I want it while I'm able to come in and ink up with my Mossy Meadow. Then when I pull my mask off, it looks like the trees are popping up from behind. So that's how you do masking, is that you stamp what you want in the foreground first, and then you stamp what you want behind it after covering it up. So then I'm going to come back with my large block here. This is an eye. So this is a fairly large block. This is the one I use a lot. This one here is the H, and I do use it a lot, and it's a great size. But these stamps are quite a bit bigger, so I needed to pull out the eye block in order to do these. Best way to make sure that they're kind of shaped the way that you want them to be is you set them down with the side you want to stamp with down onto your paper, and then just set the block on top of it. And so that way it's able to naturally go into the shape that it wants to be before you pick it up with the block. They're also able to shape them. If, you know, I wanted the natural shape they come with, but if you wanted to give it a little more arc or a little more whatever, you can easily lift it up and bend them to give you this shape that you want. But I'm going to go with the standard. And I'm using basic gray to type or to stamp my tree line. So there's that. And then I'm just going to bring in the smoky slate in order to do a moon up here in the corner. I'm going to make it nice and light. So I stamped off once onto my paper, then onto here, so it's lighter than your standard smoky slate, but it does give the hint of that moon in the background. And then if we wanted to make it look like, you know, the mountains had snow, I'm going to come in with a little bit of Wink of Stella just to give a little glistening. If this was for a girl, I might add dazzling diamonds because they are a little more sparkly and girls tend to like more sparkle. But since I'm going for a masculine look, I am going to use the Wink of Stella, but I'm using it just to give it enough glisten to where it looks like snow. And then I can go ahead and mount it onto the other nested label die. And then to mount it onto my card base, I'm just going to bring in some Stampin' Dimensionals. Okay, so here is my center focal point of my mountain scene. But then, like I said, I wanted to put a sentiment on here somehow. Now, I could use a flag or I could use a long strip of paper, but I decided this time what I wanted to do was use circles. And so I mounted up my It's Your Day, and I'm going to stamp that in Night of Navy. And I'm going to do that onto some Whisper White. And then I'm going to punch it out with my 1 3/8 inch scallop circle. By stamping first and then punching, I'm able to line it up the way that I think it's going to adjust best in the middle. So once I have that set to where I want it, I can go ahead and punch. And then I wanted to mount it on some Night of Navy, so I have my 1 1/2 inch circle punch for that. And then I want it to be kind of hanging off the side here. Now I want it partially on my center and then partially off to the side. But because this is on dimensionals, I want this on dimensionals, but only on the part that's not touching the label. Does that make sense? This part here of my circle is already popped up because it's on those, but I want to put little legs under the other two sides. So I'm going to come in with some smaller dimensionals. In this way. And this is just the edges of my standard Stampin' Dimensionals. I could also use minis if I wanted, but I always want to make sure that I'm taking full advantage of all of my supplies. And so a lot of people I've heard were throwing this part away, but why would you do that when it's still perfectly good dimensional? So I'm using it on the back side of this. And now we have our sentiment. So I just have the Stampin' Dimensional here and here. And now we're ready to decorate the inside. So I'm going to bring in a piece of Whisper White cardstock that is 4 inches by 5 1/4. Truthfully, I have a very large paper cutter, and I will cut an entire pack of 40 sheets at once to make all this size, because this is my inside and this is the size I like to use. And so I can cut it at my house, but also if you don't have that option, you can always take it down to your local Staples or Office Depot or whatever and have them cut it into the size that you want. And then you just have a big stack that's ready to go, and I just keep them in my drawer over here because I use that size a lot. It's always my inside and it's sometimes my outside, so it is a very frequently used size, and so I just have a big stack of them. But I wanted to make this match the outside of my card because I always want to bring my theme that's on the outside into the inside, and so I'm just going to do that with our tree line. So I've got my basic gray again. And then, how about Let's Celebrate You? I like that one. Okay, now mine's a little bit light. I must need to re-ink my pad. But this is one of the reasons that you may want to consider our Stamparatus, because with the Stamparatus, if I had stamped it with that and it came out not quite dark enough, I could have inked it up and stamped again in exactly the same place, and it would have darkened that up for me. There's also the option, the reason I have not glued this down to the inside yet is because if I didn't like the way this came out, I could always flip it over and stamp on the other side. But if I had glued this into my card first, I wouldn't have that option of flipping it over. But for the sake of the video, I'm just going to move forward. I think it still needs a little something. And always remember you have the option of decorating your envelopes as well. And so you can see how you can easily just decorate it up and give it a nice, pretty look on the envelope as well as your card. And then it really looks like it all coordinates together. So there you have it. There's today's card. Nice and simple. See how quick that was? We're not even, 17 minutes into it, and I've babbled a lot. So you can see this is a quick and easy card that is just adorable, and it's a masculine card, which is something we don't nearly do enough of, I don't think. So just to give you some idea, you know how I did this with the focal point in the middle on a shape? I did this for a class the other day with the same kind of idea, only this time I used a circle, and then I used soft suede and mossy meadow for the trees and my mountains, and then I did do a strip for the happy birthday, and the moon actually punches out with our 1-inch circle punch, and so that was real quick and easy to do. And then if you wanted to go a little more complex, there's lots of wonderful things that you can do with this stamp set. Like I was saying, it can be stamped from both sides. So if you have your tree line, say, and you wanted to stamp the trees, and then I'm going to take a simple chamois and I'm going to clean off my stamp. And the reason I'm doing this is the part with the detail in it. But on the back side, you can just flip this stamp over and it is designed to be able to ink this side as well. So now we have the smooth side, and you can come back in with another color, or I'm going to use the same color but stamp off. And see how that just gives kind of a shadow behind? And the same thing works with the mountains. That's what I did on this stamp here. I did crumb cake and then soft suede with the back side of the mountain stamp, and then with the front side I stamped in soft suede onto soft suede cardstock. Then I stamped in mossy meadow onto very vanilla cardstock and onto crumb cake cardstock, and then I die cut those two out. Now these were actually meant to be clouds, but I stamped them onto basic gray and cut them out to make them look like rocks. These trees are also from the same die cut set that I use for my mountains and trees and clouds, but this little truck here, that's actually from a different stamp set. That little truck is from our Pedal to the Metal. And this does not have dies, so I did fussy cut this. So I stamped it onto very vanilla. I colored it with my Stampin' Blends. I used the light Seaside spray for my windows, but then I went over it with Crystal Effects to make it look like glass, and I mounted it on Stampin' Dimensionals so that it looks like it's popping over the trucks. So, you know, there's just endless ideas of things that you can do with this very versatile Mountain Air bundle. So you can find this in our January to June holiday catalog. And it's back here in the back. See, look at all these great ideas that they're coming up with it. They can watercolor behind it. They've done the trees or the mountains in purples, in pinks. I mean, here they used the same stitched labels, but they made it a window, so they used the negative of it and stamped on the white in the background and then used this frame as the window. Just lots of beautiful ideas. And if you buy this as a bundle, this is $50.25, which is 10% off from buying the two pieces separately. So you save money by doing that for a fantastic new bundle, Mountain Air. So I hope that you consider popping on over to my store and getting your bundle so that you can play with it and make some beautiful masculine cards of your own. So thanks for joining me, and I hope to see you here next Monday at 2:30 for another Facebook Live. Thanks for joining me. Bye.